If I look a bit shiny today, it's because it's one of those days where you get out of the shower and just the heat will make you sweat, you know. It's the dog days of August, and this is my review of the Republican National Convention 2020, night 4, the night that President Trump made his speech. And for those of you who are just, joining me, if I ever do get new subscribers these days, I'm Agent of Doubt. I'm the world's worst social justice warrior, worst at it. Kind of lean to the left. And here we go. So the night started out, and it was Mitch McConnell, who to me looks kind of like if one of the Ninja Turtles were to live old enough to turn evil and be the bad guy, yeah. Not much to say about his speech. It was just standard Republican fluff. Then there was a montage about President Trump talking about victory. We're going to have victory, and pretty standard. Wasn't shocked. I kept my composure, blood pressure at a minimum. Then Dana White shows up, and you guys might know that I'm a UFC fan, and first Dana White was talking about first responders and how we need to respect them. And of course, Dana White, the president of the UFC, he's got to give lip service to first responders because he needs security at his events and also ambulances, But I feel like when Republicans say first responders, they're lumping in firemen and paramedics in with the police in a way that when Democrats are attacking police and saying we need to defund them because there's too much abuses going on, they're not talking about firemen and paramedics. They're just talking about police. And they're actually saying, we need more of the firemen and paramedics and social workers showing up to things and less of the police doing everything. So, that was a theme over the whole 4 nights, but it was there in Dana White's speech too. In Dana White's speech, he said, no one could have anticipated what challenge that COVID would bring. And that was a lie, because right before the pandemic was discovered in China, there was a sort of a war games type scenario that Bill Gates ran with many people who represented many different agencies, and it was public and private, and you can find that on YouTube. The whole thing as it played out. They role-played the whole thing. And they had it down to even, it's going to be a coronavirus, and it's going to come from China. That's how much their scenario matched what happened in reality. So, yeah, there were people who anticipated the challenge. In fact, as Obama pointed out, there was a handover folder that had a whole bunch of different information in it, and one of them was the protocol if something like this should have happened. And Obama made speeches publicly about how we need to be ready for pandemics. So yes, there were people who could have anticipated what challenge COVID would bring. I myself was yelling at my YouTube channel, and I was putting it on Facebook, hey everybody, this shit is serious. This is a lot more serious than you're taking it. These are my predictions. Now, as it stands, my predictions were about 10 times worse as what happened. But my range was, this was what has happened so far was on the low end, you know. And I do not attribute anything as far as my predictions being bigger than what happened. I don't give credit to any of Trump's involvement in this. He stalled for months and did not react. What I give credit to is actually half of the country being sane and taking it seriously. So that's why my predictions were off. I was like, well, if we did nothing, you know, what would it look like? And so with half the country doing something, and now finally a lot of businesses taking it more seriously than they were, you know, just in the last couple months, Walmart has one-way aisles, and they're giving out free masks on the entrance, like requiring people to have masks, you know. But, yeah, no one could have anticipated. Oh, my goodness. Lots of people anticipated. In fact, other countries, like, say, South Korea, who were closer in proximity to China and got it on the same day, they handled their pandemics a lot better than us because they anticipated. So Dana White saying no one could have anticipated, he's full of fucking bullshit, right? Good fight promoter, fucking full of bullshit when he's trying to defend Trump. Now, he also said, let me give you an example. In early April, Trump made a task force of business leaders, and I was fortunate enough to serve on that task force. And I'm like, early April? Is 4 months past when the pandemic started, and a full 3 months past when we knew full fucking well, and it was all over the fucking news. Right? So, yeah, a little late, but there was a lot of energy in Dana White's voice. He was a good speaker. He's you know, a good presenter. He's good for the UFC, and so he's got a lot of practice with that. But yeah, that was very, very late. Just look at the Lincoln Project's montage of how Trump was treating it, and up until late March, he was not treating it seriously. You know, and so in early April, it makes sense that he's like, holy shit, I need you all, your help. And what was Trump saying? We need sports to distract people because there aren't a lot of entertainment options, right? This is something that Dana White said. And yeah, it's like the Roman Colosseum. Don't pay attention to politics and how the empire's crumbling. Just pay attention to the spectacle of bloody human-on-human contact, right? Okay, yeah, and Dana White produced shows throughout the middle of the pandemic. He created Fight Island, which he didn't talk about, but it was a great achievement. As far as human achievements during a pandemic, arranging Fight Island, you know, as crazy of an idea as that it is, he pulled it the fuck off, you know, and I attribute a lot of people's sanity to Dana White's being able to organize things like that. So good on him. But yeah, he's trying to defend his friend Donald Trump as like from the friend perspective. But yeah, he's indefensible in my opinion. He also said Trump is the only president in modern times who did everything he said he'd do, which, again, they keep repeating this lie over the entire 4 nights, as if repeating it makes it true, but, you know, didn't have Mexico pay for the border wall, didn't overturn Obamacare, thank goodness, all sorts of things. Didn't bring the pandemic down to 0 cases, you know, kept revising how bad it was going to be, you know, because he couldn't keep his promises time and time again with that. Yeah. So I appreciated seeing Dana White, but yeah, you can't really defend. That's like trying to polish a turd, you know. Even Dana White is having a hard time selling me Donald Trump. So, and I don't even think it's going to hurt the UFC that Dana White was supporting Donald Trump. I really don't. I think like people who are interested in the fight game, they're not worried about politics. It's where they go to not think about politics. There are liberal fighters and there are conservative fighters, and he doesn't push anyone to be one way or the other. There are a couple fighters that have gone to the White House after winning their titles. Colby Covington was one of them. So, it actually helped Colby Covington sell tickets because people wanted to see his face broken in, it added to it. Kind of like, pro wrestling promotions. Anyways, there was then like this montage of what Trump has done for black people. Never mind that, recently we heard, you don't have to worry about subsidies in rural neighborhoods. We got you. You don't have to worry about the blackies invading, He didn't say that part. But basically, the fact that Ben Carson was like right after that saying, that Trump's doing a good job. Ben Carson overseeing housing and urban development, 95% of their funding was cut, and Misty, she works in social work and has worked in housing programs before, and she's still friends with a lot of them, and it has made their job so much harder to find people affordable housing. The Denver market is horrible, and all of the Section 8 vouchers, and there's tax vouchers that people can get, like tax credit apartment buildings and all that. It's dried up, The wait list for Section 8 is like 2-3 years in Denver. It's a little bit better in Aurora, but it's way too long to be homeless, Yeah. And I'm just talking about housing. Trump's talking about a lot of things that he's done for black people in that montage. A lot of different things. And I don't want to disrespect the good things that he has done for, in particular, black people. Right? That's one particular shade of brown that he has done a few positive things for. Unlike, the Muslim travel ban that he tried to impose in the beginning of his term in office. But, I'll say that he's talking up himself about like how black people are treated in America, and right now the Black Lives Matter movement is angrier than ever, and that's on his watch. So, I'm just saying, do you think anybody in Black Lives Matter is supporting the president as well? Is there a big overlap there? Like, I think I support the Black Lives Matter movement and I support Trump. Most of the people who support Trump say all lives matter, to take away from, the fact that black people have a particular plight in our society. Yeah. If I said endangered owls lives matter, that doesn't mean fuck every other animal on the planet. It just means that there's a couple barn owls that are going extinct right now, and we need to protect them. They need our special attention. Right? And if you can understand that, you understand what Black Lives Matter fucking means. Right? Anyways, let me keep my blood pressure down. I'm starting to drop the F-bombs because we're getting close to me talking about Trump. Because I watched a whole more than an hour of his speech for you guys, for your entertainment, and for, posterity, for the internet archaeologist who will look at my video 100 years from now. Thanks for watching. This is how I felt in 2020. All right, so there was a story about a retired police officer, a police captain that responded to a home alarm, an alarm at a business that alerted his phone, so he went there, and then he was shot and killed by rioters. And left behind a wife that was a dispatcher that was really sad that he went, and really sad that he died. And it was a horrible tragedy story, and I agree that it is a tragedy. As far as is this going to happen more on Democrats' watch? This is Trump's term. This is happening in Trump's term, right? This isn't like a sample of what you'll get under Biden. Right now, it's Trump that is in office, and this is what you're getting. Riots, right? If we had Biden in office, we might not have that same passion for thinking, the only way we can get attention for our problems is rioting. They might actually have somebody who'll listen to their issues and do something about it. Just saying. They want to put it all on this is the Democrats and this is what it's going to look like. You're all going to turn into cities like this. And no, it's not like that's the case. This is in a direct reaction to Trump. The day after Trump's inauguration was the second biggest protest march I've ever seen. Second only to the We Are Women protests that I've seen in Denver. Okay. And video footage on my YouTube channel. I put it up there for you guys to see. Let's see. So that next was Ben Carson, right? I think that's where we're at. Man, I lost my spot. Ben Carson, he once again repeated, "A rising tide lifts all boats." And let me just say, that's just the new way of them saying trickle-down economics. If we give more money to rich people, then everybody's going to have more money. Right? If we support these larger businesses, right? They like to say that they're all for small businesses, but look at where the relief funds went. The trillions that were in that relief fund. It's going to cost all Americans $6,000 each, and we only got $1,200 in our hands. Where'd the rest of the money go? Just go ahead and research it yourself. The small business funds that were out there, they got snatched up by larger companies that were quick and on the ball as far as getting their applications in and getting rubber stamped. And, every small business needs help right now. And Trump is in office during this. Just saying. He'll point to the stock market chart and say, look, we're doing good. But is that you and me? No. So Ben Carson also said that racism is that black people are a larger portion of people who get abortions. And this is a true statement that black people are disproportionately getting abortions, but also they're disproportionately affected by poverty. And when you're thinking about how you're going to bring a child into this world, Republicans only care about children up until they're born, and then, fuck them when they're alive. We only care about them, from conception to birth, and then you can just grow up in poverty. And those conditions that those people who are in poverty see, that it's going to be that hard to raise their kid, that's why they choose abortion. You know, and it just so happens that poverty correlates with being black in America. So, the guy who's the head of housing and urban development, as their budget was cut 95%, maybe he should have squealed a little bit more about how single-parent mothers can't find affordable housing, and so they might be thinking, oh, time to give up on the idea of raising kids because I can't even provide a place for them. You know? Especially, I want you guys to look up the at-home program funds. It's the @home. Go ahead and look at that and tell me why that program had to be cut. Because it was disproportionately going to black people, maybe. And, you know, the administration is a little bit more racist than they claim to be. Next up was Rudy Giuliani. And, you know, when he was mayor of New York City, I think he was a lot more likable, you know. But, you know, when people are in certain positions, they don't put out all of their beliefs out there. They only put out the things that they're working on, the things that matter to their position. You know, they don't say the quiet parts out loud as much. So, you know, I think a lot of people have Rudy Giuliani as being, you know, mayor when 9/11 happened. I think that goes a long way as far as him not being really condemned for his views. Rudy said that Biden is a Trojan horse for people like Bernie and AOC to bring about socialism. And being on the left and supporting those progressive candidates, what I saw in the primaries was Biden was put forth as the way to quiet those people so we could win an election. Right? It's not like he was there to bring about socialism. He's keeping a lot of progressive programs from happening. That's what I saw. So, people on the right see it a little bit differently, or they're trying to frame it differently. It's like they have one set of talking points, and even the most moderate of the Democratic field that just happened to get the nomination, he's still going to get painted with all the rest of the progressives. Whereas, like, no, I wish he was more that way. You know, I don't want actual socialism, but I do like progressive social programs. You know, like funding for HUD. He said that the left sabotaged the movement with George Floyd protests by bringing Antifa and BLM into it and then making those peaceful protests that everyone agreed with into liberal riots, you know. And then he actually said the words, "All lives matter," which is a dog whistle, right? It's a racist dog whistle at this point. Inserting it into your speech when you know it's going to put off so many people. I mean, nothing you say is in a bubble. Everything's within its context. You say all lives matter in a speech, you're dog whistling to racists. So, and just see what I said earlier about endangered owls, as far as my feelings on that. He was blaming lawlessness on liberal governance, and I'll just say that the sort of poverty that brings about rioting and looting and whatnot, that happens more concentrated, where you can get a lot of people together to create these giant riots in giant cities. So cities, because supporting Democrats who will bring about more social programs is more important to these people in poverty, cities slant left, right? So by saying that, all the riots are happening in big cities, governed by Democrats, it's actually all the riots are happening in big cities which happen to slant left because it's in their best interests. He said, "This is a taste of America under Biden." And I'm like, what? But Trump is the president right the fuck now. This is actually a taste of Trump America. This is Trump America. This counts as Trump America because we're still, the election hasn't happened. It'll still be his America for another 2 months at least after the election. Everything that happens right now counts as Trump America. And you can't tell me that there won't be more protests under Trump's America, right? I'll just predict 2 protests right now. The shooter in Kenosha, I think that he's probably going to get off without the sentence that black people would have wanted, or people that support black people would have wanted. And also, I think not all 4 of the police officers that were involved in George Floyd's death are going to get the sentences that a lot of people would have wanted, and we're going to see Rodney King-level riots again. No matter who's president, right? But as far as what this is a taste of, this is a taste of Trump's America, because it is Trump's America. And it's a taste of what's going to happen pretty much no matter what, right? The way that people get treated sometimes can escalate things and sometimes can de-escalate things. If people think that there's no law enforcement coming, maybe that will embolden them. But sometimes law enforcement pisses people off and actually agitates them, And we'll see. We will see. Because not everything about these protests is how the president is talking. It's some of it is the local response. So we'll see. Next, there was Senator Tom Cotton from Arkansas who said that China is rooting for Joe Biden. And I was like, so is the rest of the world. But no, really, probably North Korea and Russia are rooting for Trump. Probably Brazil right now is rooting for Trump. Probably Venezuela as well. Even though Venezuela won't like U.S. anyway. Either way. It's just like us voters, Venezuela's looking at this as like, the better of 2 evils. As far as how we interact with them. Then there was Alice Marie Johnson, who received a commutation from Trump. And Alice's commutation was on a tough on drugs, tough on crime stance conviction, where she got like almost a life sentence, and she served like 22 fucking years of it. And Trump let her out, and he's looking at other people like her, he says, but I haven't heard of mass commutations under his watch. I've heard of this one. Right? I want to know how many commutations there have been. And a commutation isn't enough for some of these, because I just, as an addiction counselor myself, it's hard for me to help rebuild someone's life when they are carrying around a felony, it really relegates people to the dregs of society, and it's hard for me to help them rebuild their lives. So, at least it's getting lip service, at least there's that, but I wish there was more action like this. And at least this is a difference between the Democratic Party and the Republicans, in that the Republicans are putting forth this and giving it more lip service. Then there was Ivanka Trump, who introduced her father, right? And I can feel my blood pressure getting up because I'm almost there to talking about Trump. I was watching it, wondering about how this doesn't violate the Hatch Act, because Ivanka is a paid federal counsel to her father, right? And so she's not supposed to be able to partake in political rallies, such as the stage she was on. Also, Mike Pompeo, Secretary of State, shouldn't have talked earlier in the week, but what we're at now with the Hatch Act, as far as I can tell, because I actually looked into this while I was looking at the speech, they're violating it in a way that's never been tested with lawsuits, right? So if you don't know what the Hatch Act is, basically everyone in the executive branch, except for the president and vice president, is not allowed to show up to political rallies. And when it was originally introduced, the intent of it was that nobody in the executive branch would go to the Communist Party and speak at their rallies and say, and I am somebody who works for the president, It was back in the Red Scare days. But now, it's been like kind of modernized. In 2012, Obama signed a modernization of it. But basically, Obama himself actually had 7 of his cabinet members speak at a convention for him, right? And then there was this big discussion about it. And then when it came time for Hillary Clinton to run against Donald Trump, the next election, Hillary Clinton had 0 people working in the executive branch under Obama speak at her convention, right? And it was because Obama forbade it. Because after talking about, what does the Hatch Act mean in its intent, they came to the conclusion of, it is kind of wrong for somebody who's working in the executive branch to partake in political rallies like that. So she had 0 cabinet members, 0 administrative officials from Obama speaking at her events besides Obama and Biden, right? Who are exempt from the Hatch Act as it's written. So now President Trump, he's got both his daughter and the Secretary of State and a few others speaking at his rally, right? And it's at the White House. So there are administration officials who just deal with White House things who were working on his whole convention, who usually do things like manage some of the federal rooms inside the White House that are used for work, right? And those people working on his campaign, by scheduling and by actually setting up chairs and shit, the White House workers are not supposed to be working on campaign events, right? That's the way the Hatch Act reads, right? So what I saw, it really pissed me off that there was a whole bunch of people that were not social distancing. We're talking 1,500 to 2,000 people in attendance, and their seats were not social distanced at all. They were out on the lawn. At least it was open air. Most people weren't wearing masks, right? that pissed me off because I know, at least one transmission happened there of COVID. At least one, right? Probably way more. If you look at what happened at the Tulsa event, right? Which could have been what killed Herman Cain. Who, strangely, John Lewis dying right before the DNC, he gets like a little montage for him. Did you hear anybody say Herman Cain? We heard about Trump's brother dying, but Herman Cain recently dying. He was, a presidential candidate, and he was a voice for conservatism. What the fuck happened to him? As far as them recognizing, nothing. I watched all 4 nights, didn't hear fucking diddly squat about Herman Cain. Right? Anyways, what pissed me off about what I saw was actually just the lack of social distancing and precautions for COVID. But even though Trump violated the Hatch Act, it could have been worse, right? Having it in an open air place that he could control, I think was probably better as a response to the pandemic than having it in an arena. And probably the attendants there were probably from rural areas where there's not a lot of infection, and they drove in, parked, and then went to it, and then there was probably a process to how they decided who could be in attendance, right? So loyal Trump supporters, because I didn't see it on Eventbrite, like it wasn't fucked with by TikTok. So in that, possibly, with their controlling who could show up, maybe that was a little bit better than it could have been. And I can look beyond the Hatch Act violations, right? Some of what the lawyers of the legal counsel, the special advisors to the president, have said was that because it wasn't in a federal room like the Oval Office or one of the speech rooms inside, because it was out on the lawn, that's one exemption. And because the people who were speaking were off the clock, because they have regular work hours, if they're not on the clock, and if they don't use their official title, if Ivanka just gets up there and says, "I'm the president's daughter," rather than "I'm his special counsel," then all of a sudden it's okay, right? Which is weird because Mike Pompeo has no other relationship to the president other than he's the Secretary of State, So it's like we all know who he is. But, their lawyers are telling them that what they did is okay because they jumped through the right loopholes. None of these loopholes have been tested in court. None of them have made it to any level of federal court. So it could be that off the clock you still can't speak in favor of the president. You still can't say your title. And it doesn't matter if it's in a federal room in the White House, if it's still out on the White House lawn and White House caterers were helping set up chairs, then you're fucked. It could be. No one's ever challenged in court, if these things can be done. And I don't know. That was a little tangential, wasn't it? Let me get back to the actual meat and potatoes of what went on there and just rip this Band-Aid off and talk about Trump's. Okay, so Ivanka, she said that the Biden crime bill disproportionately affected African Americans. Which is true, because living in cities and living in poverty also correlates to being black in America. It disproportionately affected people who are in poverty. If we didn't have the correlation between poverty and being African American in America, then we might not have seen the crime bill being disproportionately affecting African Americans. But it was never intended to do that. It wasn't like the lock up blackies bill. Then she said she said something about the Farmers to Families Food Box program, which I have never heard of before this, right? And then this morning I was woken up by a call that was my own mother used me as like an emergency contact, and she got a delivery from this service, like a subsidiary of it, of food that we scheduled for Monday for her to get. I had no idea this program existed until, last night when I saw this show. But yeah, it is a good thing that happened, that they saw all the food that was going to waste, because farmers were plowing tons of food into the fields. They were letting go loose of gallons and gallons worth of milk that they couldn't have delivered to the right outlets, because our restaurant chains that get a lot of that food, there was no way for them to switch over to different supply chains really easy. So for everything that they've done with the Farmers to Families Food Box program, I give them credit. That's a good thing that Trump did. It in the face of every other thing that he mismanaged. At least, we now have a template for if this were to happen again under any president, that there's a way to immediately realize that supply chains from farm to restaurant are going to be interrupted, so we need to switch them to farm to grocery store or farm to social programs. So we know now, it's good points for Trump. Then she said he passed 9 laws against human trafficking, which was the closest thing she said to a dog whistle to the QAnon Epstein conspiracy theorist believers. That Trump is trying to drain the swamp of a satanic pedophile network, because he signed 9 different pieces of legislation about human trafficking. No one in the DNC or in the RNC named Epstein or talked about Epstein, and there are so many people waiting for them to say it, waiting for them to bring it up. Who's more Epsteined? The Dems or the Republicans? Who's more connected to him? I can tell you what I looked into as far as Trump's connection to Epstein, because he did fly on his plane once. That flight was to New York. It wasn't to the island. And also, the island didn't exist until 2 years after Trump went on his plane, when Epstein bought it. So it didn't even belong to Epstein when when he was on Epstein's plane. But what I see as the program of getting dirt on people who might be political or financially connected by serving them up kids. That program of Epstein's was still in place back then. It was just in its infancy, but he was getting connected to people that ran beauty pageants, and Trump was one of them. So yeah, that was the closest mention, was that Trump signed 9 laws against human trafficking. And in QAnon mythology, Trump is only president. His whole reason for being president was to tear apart a pedophile sex ring, right? And so he's trying to drain the swamp of those people. And yeah, it fits the QAnon mythology. Later in Trump's speech, I didn't see any nod to QAnon that I recognized. Maybe there's something that I don't know about because I don't follow the QAnon drops, because I don't have a friend who's hypnotized by Q anymore. More on that at a later date, because I used to have a friend that was really involved in that. But yeah, the next was she was talking about a peace deal in the Middle East, which I'm sure her husband Jared Kushner was very happy about, because they're Jewish, and they talk a lot about how it was the first one in like 25 years, and it's going to be a really good thing. I don't actually know a lot about it, or if it is actually holding. When I saw the explosion in Beirut, I was like, I hope that's not a nuke. And it turns out probably wasn't any sort of attack. It looks more like it was, an accident, because they were storing explosives, basically, ammonium nitrate. So it looks like it came from that. But when I first saw it, it was really easy for me to believe, holy shit, that was an act of war. Even Trump said, we're going to get him. We're going to find who's responsible for this act of war. And the news was like, was this an act of war? We don't know. And then that went nowhere. But, they don't bring that part up in this RNC. That just kind of like died in the news media. But like Trump was already like ready to send troops in and get to the bottom of that. And then it turns out like, oh, it was just like an industrial accident that was huge and looked like a bomb. Okay. All right. So now we're going to talk about Donald Trump. Donald Trump, he spoke for over an hour, and I watched the whole thing. And yeah, it started with 4 more years chance, which I was happy that they weren't 12 more years chance. I heard those have popped up in places, but he mentioned Hurricane Laura, which I have family that are displaced by it right now. And I hope his response to it is better than Puerto Rico, because Puerto Rico is still a little sore from his response to that. And they're going to be looking at that response very closely between now and the election. He thanked his family. He thanked the vice president. Was saying some very stock things for President Trump to say. And then he said, just like the vice president said, he said, we will produce a vaccine by the end of the year. And half of his supporters are not going to take it because they're now anti-vaxxers because of the shit that he said. So, but he did promise that they will have a vaccine by the end of the year. And he's going to be like herding cats trying to get his followers to take it. Because, Microsoft bad. Bill Gates bad. They're trying to microchip us. Anyways, God. We're only getting started. He said, we don't need a career politician. We have faith in Almighty God, which, kind of says that Joe Biden doesn't, that the other side doesn't. God's with us. God mit uns. Just like the Nazis used to say. And that really falls flat for a guy who's an atheist like me. Like, no, I need people who know what they're doing and believe in having confidence in what works rather than faith without having evidence in things. So, yeah. And, atheism is a growing proportion of America. At least non-believers. You could probably peg it at like 10% of voters are unaffiliated to atheist. That block of voters is probably like, well, yeah, what else do you have to say? We're used to people having faith in Almighty God, but, get on with it. I thought it was funny when the crowd was laughing at Trump saying, and Joe Biden gave them hugs and even kisses. And he was just speaking the way that Trump speaks, right? And it was like an unintentional joke that he told, and the crowd started laughing, and he paused. And that was a great moment, because he's just like, oh, I told a joke. It was funny, because they're laughing about Handsy Joe, It was a good moment. I laughed because of how the moment came off, because it didn't look like it was intentionally part of his speech. He talked about the Keystone Pipeline and being pro-pipeline and energy independence. And let me tell you about something. Jobs on fracking rigs are actually down. A lot of those companies have laid off all their workers because there's a lot less demand for gasoline domestically right now because people are staying home. And so the price of gas is being driven down. Until the price of gas gets over like $3.50 a gallon on average nationwide, it makes no sense for fracking companies to exist because of the cost of extracting the fuel. So a lot of that is just like wasted energy independence right now. We are going to have a glut because people aren't using as much. People aren't going on those giant vacations. That's why Memorial Day gas prices didn't spike to back where they were last year and go make another record, because people aren't taking those trips. People are kind of strapped for cash. There's more people out of work. They're not driving places because they're scrounging their pennies, So that was my feeling about that. And energy independence, as they put it, comes with the deregulation that poisons our environment. And, oh my goodness, let's just move on. If Biden wins, I hope that, on day one, he restores the EPA to what it was. Trump said that auto companies are building factories in America now and that they're not firing employees. And I was immediately suspicious of this, and I need to research more about, like, did Trump have anything to do with it, with, like, the Canada, America, Mexico agreement? Did they really bring American auto workers back? I don't know. Let's see. He said that American borders are more secure than they ever were before. Nobody wants to come to America right now. They don't want to catch the Rona. This does not look like the land of opportunity that it did last year. So there's that. But he also said that we are building the wall 10 miles a week, and soon the wall will be complete. And the last estimates I saw was that it was like 1,600 miles of wall, and Trump built like 93 by like last December, and it was like 93 or 95. And like 90 of it was existing wall that was damaged. And if they're building an additional 10 miles a week, and there's like, say, 1,000 miles to go, it should be like 100 weeks should be 2 years, and we should have a wall the entire length of the entire actual border. We'll have a wall along it. And I'm like, well, he's been president for 3.5 years. If it takes 2 years to finish this, why do we only have a third of it walled? I'm not even a proponent of a continuous wall along the border. I'm just like, this is not meeting its estimates very well. And they're going to run into mountains. And so they're going to run into some difficulty. Because there's some mountains along that border. Along the Rocky Mountains. So... And why is most of that border that was built around the California area and not Texas? Why is it? I don't know. I mean, you find some Trump supporters in Texas. Why don't they just, I don't know. I don't know. I'm pretty sure some fact checkers will get on all that the wall will soon be complete. They have enough time to at least build a fence that spans the whole way and reinforced wall in where it's needed. It's funny. The border wall was not something the Democrats were against before Trump, and this is something that every time something the whole budget talks fall down to the whole border wall thing, and now all Democrats oppose it because it's one of Trump's talking points. I'm like, if you were for it before Trump, sit the fuck down. It's not even a really big part of the budget. Do not hold up the rest of the fucking budget for that little thing. Let him have his fucking racist fucking wall. We know that more immigration happens through airports anyway, and I don't want people crossing the fucking desert, risking their death or, having to pay coyotes, just fucking all the people coming through the airport are it's like not even having a filter on that, and then just going for the southern border. Fuck, they're probably just going to get on a boat and go to Canada and come through that way. There's so many holes in the game of trying to keep people out when we're doing really well as far as our economy. There's so many different ways they can get here. It's the wall means nothing to me as a voter. It's Trump's symbol, and they're attacking Trump's symbol when they hold up all the rest of the budget about that. And when they were for the border patrol expenditures and border wall before that, and then just because it's Trump's issue, they're against it. I don't like those politicians. And the type of politicians that are like that are the ones that are the moderates that the DNC keeps giving us. The ones that I would have preferred have a much cleaner record on those issues. So, anyways, back to Trump. He said, Trump said he's done more for African Americans than any president since Lincoln, and done more for blacks in 3 years of his presidency than Joe Biden did in 47. And I just, I find that to be empty dick measuring, really. There's just going to be people arguing whether that was true. But for me, that was an incredible boast. Incredible boasting. And not much to show for, actually proving that he did so much, It's more opinion. It's hard to really quantify, in my opinion. Whether he did more than all these other presidents since Lincoln. They talked about the Middle East peace deal, and the camera panned to Jared Kushner, and he thanked the UAE and Israel And I'm like, probably had a lot more to do with the UAE and Israel than it did like the U.S.'s involvement. I mean, it's their region of the world. You know, did we strong arm both of them to the table? You know, they. It's really hard for me to want to give credit for this. It happened under Trump's term. Peace accords happen all the time and get broken all the time in that region. I write off the Middle East a lot as just being a muddy mess. And our moving our embassy to Jerusalem being a really horrible statement as far as how much of our actions as a country are tied to religion. You know, it's a religious importance city. That's why we want to be there. It has nothing to do with what would be best for our country overall. It has what's best to do for the feelings of evangelicals. And I feel like it's respecting the establishment of religion when decisions are made in that vein. And I don't like it. Moving on. Trump said he killed al-Baghdadi and Soleimani, which is true. Happened under his watch, and they were bad people. He said that he killed 100%, destroyed 100% of ISIS, and I doubt that. I think that you kill enemies in the Middle East, and like a new generation springs up more pissed off than before. Violence begets violence, and I doubt that we've seen the last of ISIS. It's just going to morph into a different entity. He said that the caliphate is 100% destroyed, and I'm like, you really would have to do ethnic cleansing to affect something like that, and I'm not in favor of ethnic cleansing at all. I'm just saying, you leave family members alive, they're going to hate you after you kill all the soldiers. That's just the way it is. He said troops are coming home, which we have just about as many troops deployed overseas as we did, but he didn't put it this way, but I'll give him credit for, we have less active war happening with U.S. troops involved now than we did under Bush or Obama, right? We have less people getting blown up with IEDs. We have less people in harm's way under Trump. That is actually true. Very true. We almost went to war with Iran right before COVID struck because of the way that Soleimani and al-Baghdadi were killed, but, COVID happened, and by luck or by skill, we've had less U.S. soldiers die on Trump's watch. That's true. And as a proportion, more of our enemies have died versus U.S. troops. And we're trying to get that proportion down to 1 to 1 million ratio, right? Like, they kill one of us, we kill 1 million of them. We're getting really good at it. I think with the Iraq War, the most recent one, it was 5,000 U.S. soldiers had died by the time we had 500,000 Iraqis dead, so, and the numbers grew from there. They grew on both sides, but it was at least around 100-to-1 ratio, because we have a really excellent Air Force. They're very efficient, and then the rest of our Army goes in and mops up. The Marines go in and mop up, but they go in on a very softened target. And, the better the ratio, the better for America. And it is Trump's job to defend America, as it's every president's job. And we're getting, over each presidency, we're getting a little bit better at having them die and not us. Which is hard when you're the world police and you have like 800 different military installations around the world, where no other country has that, because it's all about us intimidating the whole rest of the world. Leave a comment below about that. Trump gave mention to the 3 troop pay raises he gave. He gave soldiers a pay raise. And I will say, back when I was of a different persuasion and still in the military, in the 2000 election, my vote was swayed by a raise in pay from from going into the military under a Democrat, and then thinking about like who's going to raise my pay more. I voted based on what was going to raise my pay, not most of the rest of my politics were still in flux because I was young, right? So that was a big thing for me, and I think that's kind of like buying the vote of the military as a bloc, but most of them support Republicans anyway. It's I don't know that Republicans are best for them, but I know that they support them. As far as who's dying more, I think I could actually agree that Trump in the last 3.5 years has been better for U.S. military members as far as less of them dying. That I could give him. Not by what it looks to me as his intent, but actually just the effects. It is that way. Anyways, he said Biden spent his entire career on the wrong side of history. False. As far as trade agreements, I think there's good and bad to every one of them. And, he was primarily talking about trade, but the way he said it, his entire career was on the wrong side of history. He was the one who introduced the Violence Against Women Act, which I don't think that Trump would want repealed, So there's a couple of different instances where I'd say Biden was on the right side of history. He said that China loves Biden, and what I heard when he said that was, well, Russia loves Trump, and North Korea loves Trump, and a couple other countries where there are Trump hotels love Trump, because that's the way that they funnel money into his organization for grift. Look at how many Saudis have stayed in Trump hotels both abroad and in our country, and how much they pay for staying in Trump hotels to enrich Donald Trump. Then he said he blames the virus on China because they could have contained it, but they didn't. As if they intentionally let it out. Right? He blames them like they could have contained it, but they didn't. Well, here's the thing. In China, they contained it well enough that their own provinces weren't getting it from the Wuhan province, which would be the equivalent of shutting down interstate travel and commerce. in America, which Trump did not do. He did not make any national decrees such as to shut down interstate borders at all. China did that, and China kept the virus from spreading to their other provinces that much by doing that, right? And so he's blaming them for, the first little bit of it getting out, but it only takes a couple of instances, like a couple people, traveling to other countries and then infecting other people. It only takes a few to ignite the pandemic. But when it's small, you have to contain it. And they did. Trump did not. And it's notoriously, hard to detect when some people are asymptomatic. You can't just set up with temperature scanners and catch everybody who's got it, because some people don't have a fever when they've got it. He said that we did good at fighting the COVID-19 and supporting healthcare workers, and I disagreed with him, and I think I've said enough on that on different days, other days, so I'll skip that. I just disagree. We had healthcare workers that were wanting for N95 masks and using paper surgical masks instead. So they weren't able to get the gear that they needed. We had healthcare workers wearing trash bags. Trash bags in order to protect themselves. And they make a big deal about no person who needed a ventilator went without one. We got almost there. Almost, but that is a fact. But we were almost at a shortage, using as many as we had, almost. And so he's lucky that is the case, because he gets that speaking that bullet point to say at his rallies. But as far as the rest of the PPE, no, we had shortages. I have many friends who work at local hospitals that were issued like one mask for the whole week. When you're only supposed to wear one mask for like at max 4 hours, they were being issued one mask for the whole week, and then they were issued the wrong type of mask, just like the paper one, Anyways, he said that we have to get back to work, which makes me think that he thinks that Democrats are lazy and they all just want to stay home and not work. And that's not just his stereotype. That's just like over the ages. That's been like a Republican stereotype of Democrats, that they just want to be draws on society and just not put in as much as they're taking out. Wasn't surprising for him to say that. He called the Democratic platform, the agenda that's on their website, he called it the Bernie Biden Manifesto, which is painting them as being, communists, which, no, they... Anyways, disagree with that. He said, everyone has the right to life from conception to birth. That's standard fair Republican talking point. We may disagree, but, I didn't let it get my blood boiling. He said, Dems removed under God from the pledge twice at their convention, which, no, it wasn't at the actual... Anyways, it was at caucus meetings, and I'm actually okay with that, because I'm an atheist, and I know that under God was added, because of McCarthyism and, Red Scares and us trying to set ourselves apart from other countries, and it's not inclusive because I'm an atheist, and I'm never going to say under God during the Pledge of Allegiance. And if there are atheists, which, comprise 10% of the country, if they are, reciting the pledge and they leave it out, I'm okay with that. It doesn't reflect their beliefs, and I'm more okay with an atheist leaving it out because that's them being truthful. He said Democrats will make every city look like Democrat-run Portland, Oregon. And all I have to say about that is this is Trump's America. And he's any place where there's something bad going on, he's going to blame it on somebody else. There's lots of blame, not him taking responsibility at all. He's like, no, that's the way Portland, Oregon is running their stuff. He'll say that first responders are important and policemen are important and all that, but then say, oh, well, the policemen that are there, they're not getting any of the blame from him. It's not the police chiefs. It's the governance that he's attacking. It's always, his political enemies are the ones who are in the wrong. I think if we have more Trump, we're going to have more cities look like Portland. And if we have Biden, if Biden wins, we're going to have less cities that look like Portland as far as protests. Trump agitates people. He's an agitator. He took credit for the reduction in statues being removed because he says that he signed a bill that said that they get 10 years in prison, and all of a sudden people stopped removing statues. And I was like, correlation doesn't mean causation. Maybe it's that all the statues that were left were not the easy ones to get to, or they were a lot heavier, or, as in what happened in Denver, they actually removed the mayor and the governor had like 3 statues removed. One was of Christopher Columbus, so that they wouldn't be removed by protesters. So that happened too. And for him to take credit for that, I mean, like, he says that what he signed was that big of a deterrence. I don't think that protesters are worried about that at all. He said that they are rioters and looters, not peaceful protesters. What I want to say about that is almost every big protest where there are peaceful protesters attracts rioters and looters, whether they're just like anarchists or just miscreants who want an excuse to break stuff and steal stuff, and they're just showing up for the cover of the crowd, or if they're actually in favor of it or in favor of what they're protesting, and also so worked up that they're ready to break something. Large protests attract that certain element and give it cover. And so we're never going to stop having protests undermined by violent people. So the best thing to do is probably find some other way to help your cause that isn't something where somebody else can spoil it. I've done that. A lot of other people I know have done that, where we've just gotten involved in activism in different ways, right? That's my feelings on that. And I do feel like anyone who throws rocks at windows or shoots up a place, because there's bullet holes in my Capitol building right now in Denver. Anyone who does that needs to be prosecuted. And whether or not they were part of a protest march or not, they need to be prosecuted the same way. He said that Democrats stand with rioters and looters and flag burners, and Republicans salute the flag. And I just want them to have to deal with the idea of craven images and idols, and the fact that they align themselves with, the Christian religion, and then, you know, they treat the flag as if it's some thing that can't be burned as a statement. They treat it, they enshrine it in a way that I think was directly spoken against in the Bible. And I think that's for them to discuss amongst themselves, because I'm not a religious guy, but there's a little hypocrisy there. He said that the 10 most dangerous cities are run by Democrats. I'm like, oh yeah, they're also very large, and all of the larger cities slant Democrat, because it's in the best interests of the people. That's why they are, so congregated together in cities, is because they need these social programs. And as our country grows, as cities get bigger, more cities will get more Democrat. The more population we have, we will have more progressive leanings. That's just how the world works. He said, who's hiring these radical professors and judges and prosecutors? And what I heard in that was more not so much the judges and prosecutors, but the radical professors part. I'm like, there he is again, anti-education. When people come to a university and what their beliefs beforehand, what their beliefs are, comprise mostly of lies, and they're not rooted in fact. When they come to a university and they have to face that, all of a sudden the professors are radical. No. Universities are places where science rules. History gets put into proper context, and people encounter opinions other than their own. And if you're going to go to a university coming from a place of ignorance, and you want to leave with the same beliefs, you're going to leave in ignorance, right? If you came in ignorance and you're comfortable with your ignorance, you're going to leave in ignorance, and you're probably not going to ascend to being a professor at that university. So there is a bias in universities towards professors not celebrating ignorance. Trump said they spied on his campaign and they got caught. By they, I know he means the Obama administration and all that. He said, we'll see what comes of it. And I'm like, I hope in the next 4 years we do see, the final outcome of any court cases that happen because of that. Because, a lot of the people that are in politics at the executive level are old, and I'd like them all to see justice being dealt out in their lifetimes. He also said, many things have a different name now, and they're trying to scare you out of what you of saying what you know to be true, which was a dog whistle for being anti-LGBT and anti-gender non-binary people. That's just, it is what it is. If you are yourself bigoted against people who identify as gender non-binary, and you don't want to use the pronouns that they choose, and you feel like it's your right to call them whatever pronouns they were assigned at birth, and it bugs you to use different pronouns, if that's your bigoted leanings, then he was speaking directly to you. Please vote for Trump. He said, without borders, we don't have a country. And when he said that, I actually looked up what countries have border walls. And I got a article on Wikipedia, which, not the best of research, but it actually had a map of, like, lines on the globe where these border walls are. And actually, there's a lot of countries that don't have border walls, but they have borders that have been measured out, and people can drive right across the border checkpoints with, like, there's no checkpoint. There's just like a sign that says now entering this country. And if there is a sign, same thing with our states, between our states. There are places where I can cross a state line and not see entering Wyoming or re-entering Colorado. I can show you right where they are. Go around the shut down strip mine, diamond mine that is on the Colorado and Wyoming border, and try to find a way to get into the diamond mine, like I did with I was going to use a newfangled blacklight to see if part of the strip mine might have left some diamonds behind. And it's sitting like right on the border. So like I tried to, get in all the way around it. And I was driving on roads that they were crossing the border, and there's no border checkpoint at all, Now going into California, you're going to see a weigh station, and there's a place where they're going to ask you if you have any bananas, because they don't want fruit flies, right? So there's that. But there are many countries in Europe where the only way you would know what country you're in is like the train stops and the conductor says, okay, well, about 10 minutes ago we crossed the border and now this is the city you're in. And this is actually part of this country. Like, you don't know the exact point that you crossed the border. So to say that without borders we don't have a country, that's bullshit. It's bullshit. It's a little bit harder to be racist and exclusionary towards immigrants when you don't have a border to be able to screen them at, But I would say what's needed more than that is, more than a border, you should probably have, programs in place that deal with all of the visas that you issue that people extend their stay illegally on, like student visas that run out and people don't go back home. That's like the biggest part of our immigration problem that I think could be addressed right away. There's people who overstay their visas, and they came here pretty much legally, and that's how they're here. And because of governmental red tape, they don't leave right away. And if you want less undocumented, or what Trump actually said in his speech was illegal aliens, but if you want less undocumented people or less of that situation, you need to, have programs in place that monitor when students are going to run out of their visa time and, follow up on them, and don't make the processes that they go through unnecessarily long, But the whole point is actually, make it harder for brown people. So why would they do that? He also said he wants to require price transparency for medical bills and bring prescription prices down. And I agree with him on that. And I have in practice seen some of that happening. I have seen both on the state level and on the national level prices for prescription drugs, including insulin for diabetics, come down. And I'm all for that, and I do not disagree with his position on price transparency, no surprise bills. And when you do get a bill and you're billed for a $16 comb for your hair, but you're bald, no fucking bald person who's undergoing chemotherapy should be billed every day for a plastic comb that costs $16 that you could get for 3 for 99 cents at the 99-cent store. And then, turns out that it was never given to them at all. It just remained in the hospital's little box of combs behind the nurse's desk. And not once did they bring a comb to their fucking hospital room. And I'm speaking from an experience of helping out a friend here. That shit should never happen, that you get charged $16 for a fucking hospital comb during your stay and you never even used one. It shouldn't be $16 in the first fucking place. I got my own fucking comb. And if I need to pack an overnight bag, you ain't charging me for anything that I brought to my hospital room with me. So everybody, ask for an itemized bill. So I agree with Trump on that. But then he said, look how low your gasoline bill is. And took credit for low gas prices. And we have a glut of gasoline in America because nobody's going anywhere, which is artificially pushing the price down because we have a poorly managed pandemic. So yes, in a way, he is responsible for the low gas prices because, it's like 170,000 people have died of the coronavirus so far, and it's scaring people from wanting to travel. It's a horrible thing to want to take credit for. Because it's, the cause is mismanagement. Anyways, he said you haven't seen prices like this low in a while. And actually, I have a video on my channel where, as a joke, I looked up at gas prices that were $1.99 here in Denver, and I was like, thanks, Obama. Because people kept on looking at like $5 gas in his term and saying, thanks, Obama. But when it dropped, no one gave him credit for it. And I think the lowest I've seen gas at right now is like $2.40, like 40 cents more expensive than the lowest it happened under Obama's time. But it's different in different regions, so I can't say for sure what the gas prices are in your neck of the woods. So, he said we would, if he wins, we're going to restore patriotic education and respect free speech on college campuses. And the whole patriotic education thing, I think, is scary. In the Nazi, socialist, communist way, scary. State-sponsored education and brainwashing, scary. When he said we're going to restore patriotic education, that means, fostering nationalism in people, which I'm not a fan of. It's weird. It's like they want to call the other side the Nazis. They want to call the other side the communists. They want to call the other side the socialists, and then they want to do the bad things that you get out of regimes like that. They want to call the other side authoritarian. Well, how authoritarian is it when you're wanting a nationalized curriculum that restores patriotism in people and a more fondness for their country and their leader? It's very authoritarian, and I'm and they see the Dems and the Republicans, they see it in each other, but they never see it in themselves. There's a huge lack of self-awareness there. He said that we're going to respect free speech on college campuses. We do. And every syllabus that I see actually has in it that we will give you academic freedom to pursue things. This weird blurb that says that we respect academic freedom, right? And that has to do with how Trump went on in his speech to say, and we will be enforcing that. We'll make sure that they don't infringe on your free speech, and that means if your professor sees that you are a Republican by the way that you are writing your talking points in your paper, they're not supposed to push their political views on you and give you a lesser grade, right? They're supposed to weigh your paper on its merits as far as are you learning, right? But what it's being abused as is if you have a really, really strange belief that goes against science, like, say, creationism versus evolution, right? If you want to get credit in a biology class and your paper on evolution says that evolution never happens and it's always God's will, and I believe in creationism, you probably should get a bad grade in biology for writing a paper like that. But free speech on college campuses. Also, if you're being blatantly racist, college campuses normally foster more inclusion, more racial equality, and if you say something blatantly racist on a college campus, you should be, treated accordingly. You're not learning, if you're on a college campus and you think that, oh man, all these brown people around here are making my experience worse, and I need to, write about it in my paper for school. Maybe you need to have a talking to by the dean, and they need to look into where it is that you're getting your beliefs. But really, I feel like when Trump says we're going to respect free speech on college campuses, it's a dog whistle for you're going to be able to express your bigoted racist views and not have any consequences for it. Next, he said that U.S. will be the first to plant a flag on Mars, which, given how long it takes for a spacecraft to get to Mars, I am very skeptical that this could happen within his next term. Maybe we will be the first to plant a flag on Mars. Maybe it will be one of our companies like SpaceX that will do it. But I don't know that it's going to happen within his next term. Like, the logistics of it, as far as time from Earth to Mars for a craft and all that. We've got the Mars rover. Does it have a flag on it? Did we already kind of win that? Or are you saying like a person planting a flag is the goal? I don't know. Could a robot do it, and then it counts if the robot just like sticks the flagpole and like goes up and then it like releases and the flag unfurls? Does that count, or does he mean like first to set foot on Mars? Because it could happen, but just not in, because the travel time again. Like, we got to hit this window to get it within what would be one presidential term. There's this perfect window that like we could have a craft like right. Yeah, it's just not going to happen in his term. It may happen eventually. He says that America is the greatest, most exceptional nation in the history of the world, and that our country wasn't born on cancel culture, which is again him dog whistling to his base. You're free to say whatever you want, free to espouse any bigoted views you have, and you shouldn't be afraid of cancel culture and speaking your mind. And I would say that he actually lives what he's saying there. Look at his Twitter account, and he's not afraid to speak his views. His daughter said as much when she introduced him. He ruffles feathers, and Yeah. What I think people should also pick up on, though, is that he mentioned American exceptionalism. That is a whole thing that you can Google yourself and read what that actually means and what that entails for the rest of the world. Lastly, I think his last few minutes were like standard fare for any president. And I feel like he really nailed the landing as far as it being an almost perfect Trump speech. Like, as good as he could do. Like, no real flubs as far as us being able to understand what he was saying. The closest flub that he had was saying abolitionist instead of abolitionist, which I understood in context what he meant anyway, so it could have been just his dentures falling for a second, you know. Like, I was hoping like a voodoo priest with a doll sticking him in the mouth. I was hoping that his dentures would fall out while he was speaking, while I was watching it, you know, because I'm not a fan. But he looks on his game. If you feel like Trump has sometimes looked like he was on drugs and he might have a drug dealer behind the scenes, that chemist nailed the batch that he gave him last night. And he was right there being Trump, the Trump that we know can be like that. And even his makeup artist was pretty good. He looked as young as he's ever looked in his term, you know, because, you know, the caked on makeup look with, you know, speaking from a podium type deal. There were no real close-ups that would show you how much makeup was used, and just skin looked smooth. His speaking was as polished as it's ever been, and this looks like we're going to get the best Trump we could get versus the best Biden we can get going into the debates. And I will give the edge to Trump there. There have been some calls from like Nancy Pelosi to not even dignify Trump with debate. And Biden's like, no, I'm going to debate him. And I'm like, dude, you're doing good without debating him. This is not good. You know, as far as who has more to gain by these debates. I mean, he's doing well in the polls. I hope he's well coached on zingers if he's going to go against Trump, who doesn't look like he's slipping. There have been times in Trump's administration where I thought that maybe he was, you know, having a stroke that day, you know. But I just did not see it in that speech. You know, and that's, as a therapist, that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for, you know, is he a little off? He was not. He closed his speech with, we're going to make America safer, stronger, prouder, and greater than ever before. And what was going through my head was Kanye West sampling Daft Punk, you know, harder, better, faster, stronger. And that's all you get, because I just did a horrible dance for y'all. So that was my review of the RNC. It's all over. I've watched the DNC, the RNC, and I will look at the debates and make some response videos for you on that. And they'll probably be just as long. I don't know how long this was. I was talking for like an hour. And for those of you who are just listening to my voice while you're playing World of Warcraft, it's time for you to find something else to put on your playlist again, because you've run out of me speaking. So, catch y'all later.